Most honest reason was I was looking to start to build an audience. So when I started doing all this pre-September 2020, I actually started writing a book that I had actually had people ask me to write. So I started writing a book, and while I was writing the book, I started looking into self-publishing and realized that if I wanted someone other than my wife and my mom to read it, that I was going to have to build an audience.
Today's episode of my podcast story, we have David Brent Downley, a passionate relationship and personal development coach, speaker, and the host of the Driven to Thrive broadcast. Purpose, growth, and lasting impact on men. Brent is dedicated to empowering men to live authentically and embrace their true potential, advocating for continuous growth beyond societal pressures. With over 30 years of public speaking experience and a deep commitment to fostering meaningful relationships, he founded the Fallible Man LLC alongside his wife to support men on their personal development journey. Brent's unique approach emphasizes that men are not broken, but simply need encouragement to thrive beyond the confines of the American dream. He's here to share his inspiring story on how he built his show from the ground up and the impact he aims to create in the lives of men everywhere. Can you tell me who you are and what the name of your podcast is or what it's about?
Sure. My name is Brent Downley, and I'm the host of the Driven to Thrive broadcast. We focus on purpose, growth, and lasting impact for men. I'm a men's personal development coach and podcaster, and that's where we generally stay. But I have a holistic view of personal development. I think you have to reach into all aspects of your life. And so on my show, we tend to discuss the entire breadth of men's personal development, everything from, actual developing skills like time management, stuff like that, so you can pursue the goals you want to parenting and marriage and relationships. So we cover a pretty broad spectrum, but I believe that nobody is two-dimensional. So if you really want to grow, you have to grow on a broad spectrum, and that's what we do.
Personal development for men. Did you hear what I said?
Sorry, say that again.
I said personal development, but just for men.
My focus is just for men, simply because I wanted to. There's a lot of voices in personal development that are just general personal development. There's a lot of personal development for women, but I don't believe that men are specifically encouraged to grow personally. I think most men are taught to, get going, go to school, go to work, and take care of your family. And that's where life stops for most men. And so I wanted to be a voice specifically talking to men, because I've met so many men who don't actually understand or even believe that there's more to life than them just going to work and taking care of their family.
Yeah. How long have you been doing this podcast?
My first show aired September 1st, 2020.
Okay. So I think we're going to 5 years now. So in September, 5 years. Is the podcast audio or video or both?
I have both platforms.
Okay.
Has
it always been both, or you just saved you?
I have always done both. Originally, my focus has always been on audio, but I had a video camera, so I was like, you know what? I'll turn it on. I'll throw it up on YouTube. No one's ever going to watch it, but that's fine. At least I have it recorded in case I want to do something in the future. And I just kept doing it. So now I've polished the video a little bit more, so it looks a little more finalized than my first videos, but not a whole lot more.
How's the YouTube doing?
Horribly.
Could you give us the numbers? Let's be the judge of that.
Okay, sure. Yeah, no, I think I have 176 subscribers on the YouTube channel. Now, full disclosure, I went about 2.5, 3 years and wiped out my YouTube channel and started over a whole new channel, because I had thought I was paying for marketing and ended up someone got me a whole lot of bots overnight, which kills a YouTube channel. Ooh. So I completely I abandoned that YouTube channel entirely. I still have it, but I use it to host videos that I post on my website and stuff like that. So I have a hosting platform for them. I moved everything to a new channel, and then I actually just rebranded my podcast after 4.5 years in January from what it used to be called the Fallible Man podcast and I rebranded it because the name did not convey accurately or clearly who it was for and what it was about. I'd have a lot of people tell me once I explained why I called it the Fallible Man, people were like, "Oh, that's really cool." But no one cares when they're scrolling through Apple Podcasts. They're not going to let you explain what it's about. I rebranded January this year. I took January off for the first time in 4.5 years and rebranded to my new title to help clear that up a little bit. And
What's
so I'm
the?
starting
I know you
to
mentioned it earlier on, but what's the new title now?
The new title is the Driven to Thrive broadcast. It was the Fallible Man podcast for years.
The
Driven to Thrive.
Driven to Thrive podcast. Okay. 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 Do you have a website for the podcast?
I do. If you you can go to driventothrive.com or I just send everybody to purposedrivenmen.com.
Oh, okay. Okay. If you go to driventothrive.com, it takes you to Purpose Driven Men.
If you go to driventothrive.com, it takes you to just the podcast page. If you go to purposedrivenmen.com, it takes you to a page that has both the podcast and the blog and other material for men as well. So
Okay. Yeah, it all makes sense. Now that the housekeeping questions have been answered, why did you really start your podcast? Like, why? Really? What's the real reason?
The most honest reason was I was looking to start to build an audience. So when I started doing all this pre-September 2020, I actually started writing a book that I had actually had people ask me to write. So I started writing a book. And while I was writing the book, I started looking into self-publishing and realized that if I wanted someone other than my wife and my mom to read it, that I was going to have to build an audience. So I jumped on social media, and it took me about 2 weeks to figure out I absolutely hate social media. But everybody was doing Insta famous, right? In 2020, everybody was getting Insta famous overnight on Instagram. So I thought, oh yeah, I can do that. Hate Instagram, hate all the social media platforms. So after 2 weeks of going, nope, I will never actually do this, I started looking for something that was more my preferred kind of venue. And I've been speaking publicly since I was 11 years old. And I listened to podcasts and I thought, hey, I can talk to a microphone. I can do that. I hate social media. So I'll start a podcast and build an audience there with the plan to build the audience to, be able to sell a book, which I still have not finished 5 years later almost. But I did fall in love with
but we're
podcasting.
still going strong with the podcast.
Yeah, no, I absolutely, it did not take me long to absolutely fall in love with podcasting as a platform.
Yeah.
It just
Uh,
felt so natural that
yeah.
I love it.
The follow-up question I want to ask now is, how did you first, what was like your first interaction with the podcasting form of media, right? So we're stepping back a bit. Like, how did you first know of podcasting?
Okay. So I can tell you, I was in the corporate IT world. I was an office worker. I worked on a computer most of the time. Every now and then I had to go change some hardware, but usually I was on a computer. And I had enough screens that I would have like YouTube videos playing in the background because I've always listened to music. So I would like play music on YouTube in the background. And I started listening to the first podcast I ever fell in love was originally called Mark Bell's Powercast. And it was a video podcast. I mean, it's been going for like 15 years or longer, I want to say. Mark Bell was an early adopter to YouTube and podcasting in the fitness industry, and he still is today. He's got a huge podcast. I think he changed the name, but yeah, it's the podcast still been going. It's going 15 years strong or more. And I started listening because I'm big into powerlifting and strongman training, and so I'm a certified personal trainer, so I had this love for the fitness industry. And I started listening. I found his podcast, and instead of having to cycle through songs and stuff like that, I could listen to an hour and a half, 2 hour long podcast. And I went from there and started listening to the Drinking Bros podcast, which I also still listen to. And those were like for years, that was when I was working in the IT industry. That's what I did in the background was I listened to podcasts. And it was those two podcasts I listened to predominantly.
Oh, oh, I like the fact that you said and this is me going back to the previous, the answer you gave in the previous question. You said the podcast because you wanted to build an audience. And so the question I want to ask is, how's that going?
It's been a long and strange journey. I've so after almost 5 years in the podcast industry, because I'm one of those people who like I research the crap out of anything before I start it. So like I was deep into the logistics and the actual industry flow of the podcast before I ever aired my first episode. I spent months researching and studying podcasts, right?
Yeah.
And so it's been a long, strange, like I've now released over 350 episodes of my main podcast. I just crossed, I think, or I'm about to cross 100 episode on a children's podcast I also do. And so after many years of doing this, I've had some ups and downs. I actually used to be, I've been over a year now. So it's 25 now. 2020, I was in the top 1% of podcasts in the globe. I had a huge following. I had, 16, 20,000 downloads a month.
Wow.
And was doing very well.
Wow. Wait.
Yeah.
You're just going to say that and say it as if it's not big. It's not a big deal. Wow.
It's perspective.
I'm speaking to a master of the craft. Share with us some wisdom.
So it's perspective because, like I said, it's been a long, strange ride.
Yeah.
In the fall of 2023, I was in the top 1% of podcasts.
Okay.
I got deplatformed in February 2024 without any warning.
Okay. When you say deplatform, what do you mean?
So I actually got kicked off iTunes. My podcast got kicked off iTunes.
Oh, strange.
In 2024. With no warning, there wasn't like, it's not like on YouTube, when you do something they don't like, they generally issue you a warning, or if it's bad enough, then like penalize you for 2 weeks.
Yeah, you can appeal for it and stuff like that.
Yeah, I ran a marketing campaign. So every year I generally run a marketing campaign in January for my podcast, because December is usually the lowest numbers of the year for any podcast, because podcasts are something people listen to while they're doing other things. So it falls into the majority of podcast listeners listen to a podcast while they're working out, or like I was listening to podcasts while I was working on my computer and just listening in the background, or when they're in the car. And so it's something people do as part of their normal routine. They'll find the average podcast listener gets between 6 and 8 podcasts that they listen to regularly, that they're part of their normal routine. But it's part of the normal routine, right? So everybody's schedule, at least in the US, around December gets all cattywampus, right? From Thanksgiving to New Year, everybody's schedule is off the norm. People are traveling, they're vacationing, they're holidaying. And so everybody's numbers, like as a global fact with podcasting, those are generally the worst numbers of the year. And so every January, I would run a marketing campaign for a month just to remind my listeners I was still there, right? As they settled back into the new year. I got through January 2024, and all of a sudden I went from thousands of downloads every week to none. Like it was just, all my downloads just disappeared. And it, totally freaked me out, of course. So I had to get to the beginning of March so I could look at the analytics for all of February and try and figure out what happened and where it happened, right? Because as a podcaster, you're on multiple platforms, right? You're on iTunes, you're on Apple Podcasts, you're on Spotify. So you got analytics coming from everywhere. So you got to get to the end of the month and figure out what actually happened and where. And that's when I found out that the majority of my listeners had been on iTunes. Apparently I have a lot of Windows listeners. And just all of a sudden, like there were no downloads from iTunes. I could look at the previous 6 months and like 70% of my downloads were coming off iTunes. And all of a sudden just gone. So I actually installed iTunes on a Windows machine I have in one of my other rooms in the house to investigate, because I don't have it on my main work computer. And I went to the search bar and like I couldn't search my podcast. I finally went to iTunes Store, searched word for word, and found the podcast. So I tried to subscribe to it, right? it errored out every time I tried to subscribe to it.
Oh,
Like, if you went deep enough, like you couldn't find it in general search, and if you went to podcast, it wasn't there. You had to go to store, iTunes Store. It wasn't in iTunes Podcast, but it was on Apple Podcasts. So I still don't actually know what happened, but I hit a full reset in February 2024.
okay.
Uh, and it just like after years of work and getting that, dude, I almost quit podcasting right there.
Okay.
That was
So,
so hard to
so
bounce from.
wow, wow. So what do you, since there was no warning, there was no issue, what was your conclusion for like the disappearance?
What was my explanation?
Yeah, your own theory you came up with for being the
My
reason
theory.
why they kicked you out of iTunes.
So my theory, my working theory, and I can't ever actually confirm it,
Yeah.
is I had a person I had worked with on Fiverr that was very reputable. I knew several other podcasters that had worked with them in the past to run my marketing campaign. Now, I had worked with this person for 3 years already, every year.
Okay.
I have multiple friends who are podcasters, like they are professional podcasters. That's how they make their living entirely. All their income comes from that, who have used this person as well. And so my only theory is that somewhere between my 2023 campaign and my 2024 campaign, they changed up the methods and started doing something that threw red flags. And that's what got me banned or bounced
What
off.
was what
I don't know if I'm
could you like what was the marketing package like? What was the deliverables? What did they have to like do for you? Just so we could, know what we're talking about.
what to avoid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I don't know. The deliverables were a multi-thousand person reach during the campaign. So my previous experience with them is they're like my numbers would go up for that month they were running my marketing campaign, and my numbers would go up a couple thousand. And then generally, like after the campaign was over, I usually retrained. My numbers usually grew about 1,000 to 2,000 downloads per month every time I worked with them, and stayed after the campaign. Like there would be a huge skyrocket. The month of that January, like I hit 60,000 downloads that month. So January 2024, while they were running this so-called campaign for me that they had run before in the past, I had 60,000 downloads that month.
Well, ju-
It was the
ju-
biggest. Or go ahead.
how, how did you get back in?
How did I get back in?
Yeah.
I have no idea if I'm actually on iTunes. I'd have to look at my
Oh,
analytics right now.
so wait, don't tell me that
Um,
you moved on.
I honestly just like dusted my feet off from it because I was in such a spiral that I was just trying to decide if I was going to keep podcasting. I mean, going from a top 1% podcast that I spent several years working to get to having like 30 or 40 downloads a month. And I'm while we're talking, I'm actually looking, I'm on my host right now, and I can tell you iTunes isn't even registering in my downloads right now. Like in my actual analytics, I don't see iTunes at all. So I have no idea if I'm on iTunes or not right now. I'm on Apple Podcast, but I was never kicked off there.
Wait.
But no, I was
iTunes is different from Apple Podcast.
they're not the same thing. They're owned by the same people. They're not the same thing. iTunes is only available for Windows.
When you say Windows, what do you mean?
On Windows-based computers. So I have, like right now, I'm on an Apple computer, right? iOS software. Apple on its own software split everything that iTunes did and made them individual apps. The problem was iTunes got too big. It had too many things going on. You get audiobooks, you get movies, you get music, you get TV shows, right? It got too big. And so on Apple software, on Apple computers, those are now separate apps. The Apple
Oh,
Podcast is not available on a Windows computer.
okay.
So on Windows, for somebody to listen on a Windows computer, for somebody to listen, they have to download iTunes still.
So you get downloads from Apple Podcasts. That's you can see downloads from Apple Podcasts on your host.
Yes.
Okay. If you don't mind me asking, what host do you use?
I use Buzzsprout.
Okay.
I was on Podbean for years. I switched to Buzzsprout last year.
I feel like in terms of marketing stuff, like Podbean and the rest, I don't know why, but I'm just gonna say it, but I feel like they don't invest as much as Buzzsprout in terms of content marketing. Not, I don't know the other types of marketing, in terms of content marketing. Like when you go to YouTube and start searching for how to podcast, how to do this, how to do this, like the people that are coming up are like Buzzsprout, and then individual creators and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think I was very happy with Podbean for a lot of years, but when I went to Buzzsprout, I was like little things really stuck out to me. Um, Podbean is a solid host, but they're not going to market your podcast for you, and there's not a bunch of little features. Buzzsprout has like this feature where they can text you, like your listeners. Yeah, if you look in your show notes on
Oh, fan mail.
right, yeah, fan mail, that's what it's called, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think is just a really cool thing
Yeah.
that they link in there.
Yeah. I like Buzzsprout. I like the fact that they have what they call it a dynamic audio insertion, where you can like do
Mhm.
promotion across all your episodes at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Podbean has a lot of those features. It's the little things like Podbean has dynamic insertion because I've used it for sponsors before.
Okay.
But it's little things like the texting thing, being able to actually contact the person who does the podcast, which is just truly cool to me. Because one of the biggest problems in podcasting is the separation. There is not a good platform for podcast hosts to connect with their listeners.
Yeah. It's way different from YouTube where people can, comment
Mhm.
and leave comments and stuff like that.
There's a couple smaller apps like Good Pods. Good Pods is really kind of cool. And there's one called Fountain that's a newer generation podcast app, but they're still very
Yeah.
small platforms.
Yeah, that's the
They're
host
trying
probably
to
might
bridge
not
that.
even have time to go be checking, creating an account and monitoring their reviews and comments on those platforms.
Mhm.
Yeah, the issue with Buzzsprout for me is the fact that if you are doing something like a daily show where you have to be uploading a lot, Buzzsprout might
Mhm.
not be right for you. But if you're just doing a regular podcast where you publish maybe once or twice a week, yeah, you won't really have problem because they charge based on the number of hours you upload.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that's
And
one
so
of
that
those
can
things.
really yeah, that can really get you really quick, especially if you do interviews and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's
I
that's that's a
I've
deal
cut
breaker
back
for
on
me.
the interviews I do, but I've had 2-hour interviews before. Uh,
If you do that and do maybe
usually
like 10 in a month, man.
yeah, usually my normal interview is about an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half, but I've done 2.5 hour shows before.
Okay, okay. Yeah, yeah. Like I mean, it's one of those decisions a lot of persons have when they start a podcast. Like, which host should I go? Like, Buzzsprout is great. Yeah, any host. I like any host that gives you all the features regardless of the tier you are. That's
Mhm.
regardless of whether you're paying for the smallest tier or the medium tier or the highest tier. Right? Buzzsprout does that. Captivate does that. But Transistor, I kind of like Transistor. I don't know if you know Transistor.
I haven't used Transistor.
Oh. Well,
I
that's
spent a lot of time trying to decide
yeah,
which coast I was gonna go
yeah.
with.
And the moment you decided, you forgot all about the rest of them.
Well, no, I mean, I spent months before I launched my podcast, I spent months researching, right? Comparing, and they grow and change over time, right? Since I started podcasting, there's been a lot of changes. Some of the podcast hosts have disappeared. New ones have been
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
Um, Buzzsprout and Podbean have been very constant, and I think that bodes in their favor.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I've noticed is that Buzzsprout has like the highest number of episodes released in terms of active podcasts, apart from the Anchor, that's Spotify for podcasters.
mhm.
Yeah, so it's just shows that a lot of persons use it, which it has nothing to show with the quality of the platform, but the fact that a lot of persons are using it, no, I mean it's a sign. You shared yeah, wow, you shared that kind of like I won't call I want to call it setback, but it's kind of like it was a learning experience though. But do you build an email list?
Say that again.
I said, do you have an email list newsletter?
I do. And I think that's something that all podcasters should find a platform to use to do that. That is that is out of my tale of woe of being the platform. That's probably the most important thing that I can share with your audience is you have to have something that's uniquely yours. And mail lists are one of the only things that's actually yours.
Yeah.
You can be deplatformed. Like I said, I lost most of my audience, right?
Yeah.
Even though I'm on multiple platforms, iTunes was where the majority of my people found me. And so, and audiences are fickle. Like if you disappear for a little while, they will not stay loyal.
Yeah.
They
I
will
mean,
find you.
it's a
If they
routine.
listen to Yeah, if they listen to you, say, like, they listen to you on Apple Podcasts and all of a sudden you're not on Apple Podcast, they're not gonna go to Spotify and try and find you and assume you just got deplatformed. They just
Yeah,
assume you're
they
gone
they
because
will
podcasts
assume you stopped, or you ghosted them or stuff like that, and they'll just move on.
well, podcast turnover is so high. The majority of people, so 70% of podcasters quit in their first 10 episodes.
Yeah. That's the real number.
And so they're used to turnover, right? So if a show disappears, they're like, "Oh, it disappeared." They're not like, "Huh, I wonder if it's somewhere else and it's just not here anymore." And
Yeah.
so you have to be really smart about the way you connect with your audience and try and connect with them. Like I told you at the beginning, I hate social media, right? But I think that every podcaster needs to have at least one platform, whether it's Facebook or X or Instagram, something where you can DM people, where you can actually message people
Cool.
that you need to try and get your audience to connect with you on, as well as a mail list, because then they're actually they can interact with you, right? You can actually get that personal touch and that feedback with the uh DMs or whatever on a social media platform. And then having the mail list is just important. But with that, you also have to give them something that's valuable in that mail because everybody and their dog is asking for their email at this point.
Hey, just a quick break. If you enjoying the insights so far and want even more behind the scenes ideas, inspiration, and tools for growing your own podcast, join my email list at mypodcaststory.com/join. That is mypodcaststory.com/join. You get access to helpful resources, exclusive updates, and the kind of stuff I only share with my email subscribers. Whether you're starting out or already podcasting, there's something valuable waiting for you. Head over to mypodcaststory.com/join and subscribe. Now, back to the episode. Yeah,
It's utterly ridiculous these days. Everybody wants your email. And then they sell email lists. Like the average person spends like 2.5 to 3 hours a day checking email. And that's not even like corporately employed people who have to check their email. That's just the average human being. Now I'll amend that and say that's the average human being in like America or in Great Britain, right? Because these are the places where I find these studies most of the time. They're the people who have enough time on their hands to do stupid studies like this. So other places actually have real problems to worry about. So, but yeah, like the average American spends 2 hours a day checking their email.
Oh,
Can you imagine that? So it's got to be
yeah.
something valuable. If you ask for their email, you've got to be delivering something in your mail that's worth their time.
Yeah. I mean, one of the mistakes a lot of people make is that they take email address and then they ghost people. And then by the time you send in an email, people don't even know who you are, and so they just, because most times one was the good thing about mailing list is that whatever you send gets delivered, right? But the thing is,
Mhm.
when we're looking at email lists, we're looking at familiar names, people that are important. And so if I just skim like, and that's it, it's done. You want to, like, at least once a week or once every 2 weeks, but just be top of mind. People know you, and so that when they see your mail, they know, like, they know your name or your podcast name or whatever the brand name might be, so that when they see it, they know, okay, yeah, that is this guy that really talks about this stuff. Yeah, the last time I checked his mail, it was something, valuable. I should click and check, and then you have this reputation in the email, not just in the podcast. You want to have a
Mhm.
reputation basically everywhere.
So like my mail list is something I put a lot of time in. I have a bi-weekly newsletter because I don't want to spam people.
Yeah.
But like I hand curate that. Like when I send out an email, it's got content in it I haven't released anywhere else. Right. I usually have two, I don't know if you want to call them articles or posts that I put in there that go together. Like the last one was dealing with overwhelm. So I had like two different articles in it basically that I put together on dealing with overwhelm. And then I also have any offers from like the guest, if I have guests and they have a special offer for my audience, it goes in there. But there's also like a whole segment at the end that's more of I get really personal with my audience in my mailing list. Like those are the people I go the deepest with. And
Yeah.
I connect with them other than like coaching clients. Those are the people that I actually share personal stuff with and what's going on with the business and some behind the scenes stuff. So I really I spend time really invested in that because I have a client that I'm a podcast producer as well. And so I produce a couple other shows besides my own and consult on other shows. And I have a client that I produce his content every week. He does 2 to sometimes 3 shows a week. And he has an email that goes out for every single one.
Wow.
Every time he releases something, just bam. And that's the only content of that email is a bunch of sponsor ads. And it's a little blurb telling you to go watch or listen to the episode he just released. And
For
I
me,
think,
I always believe that no matter the platform you're posting content, you want to give people value in that platform.
Mhm,
Like you could tell them to go check out your stuff, which there's no problem with that. But like even if they choose not to check out your stuff, they should get value from that platform
mhm.
regardless. And a lot of persons they just use their email as a promotional stuff, and at the end of the day, people are not going to open it because they're like, nah.
Yeah. Well, that's why I spend so much time on mine. I have I have stuff from my sponsor in there, of course,
Yeah,
but
of course, but you have
that's
to.
why I spend multiple, you know, paragraphs, full articles, whatever you want to call them, actually trying to tackle something else for my audience.
Yeah,
Right. I want them to read it because when they open that email, they're like, oh man, here's an insight from Brent on something of value.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's yeah. Very like people keep saying your email list is very important. It's very important. And now I think like if a platform, I think there's this law that if things could go wrong, assume that it will go wrong. If a platform has the power to deplatform you, assume that they could possibly deplatform you. So you want to build a business such that you are insured, right, for such a thing happening, such that even if it's not like we want it to happen, but if it does happen, we are not surprised. We're not like it's just like if you're having a gas station, right? If you have a gas station, the gas station could basically how do I now? What's the word? Could basically explode, uh, fire
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. But you don't want your gas
Yeah.
station to catch fire. But you're gonna put in insurance. You're gonna put in insurance for when it does. When there's fire. But even before fire, you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
put fire extinguishers and stuff like that. Put some rules that no smoking in the gas station, stuff like that. It's not like you want your gas station to go on fire, but you know that it's a possibility, but you want to prepare for that possibility should the case it happen. So that when it does happen, you're like, it's not like I didn't expect it to happen. Like, I'm like, dude, you have a gas station. You should expect such a thing to happen. Why didn't you put things in place? And yeah,
Oh yeah.
wow.
And that's the problem with the creator economy, right? You don't own if you're on YouTube, you don't own YouTube. They can take away your channel anytime.
Yeah.
Rumble is better about it, but Rumble can take away your channel anytime.
Yeah.
Buzzsprout can kick you off. iTunes can apparently boot you. um, so you got to that's the only thing you actually have a hold of
Yeah.
is
And then,
your email
I,
list.
yeah, I think even the email list, because, think of it this way now. You could basically send your email list to me, but I won't be able to do anything with it because I don't have a name or place in the mind of the people. Of course, I could send them an email and stuff like that, but people are just going to see my email and say, "Who's this guy? I can't remember signing up for his stuff. Where did I know you?" It's like a stranger knocking on the door, and they're like, it's just like you give me the address of your friends, and I'm like, I go to their door and I knock on their door, and they're like, "Dude, who are you? Am I supposed to know you?" Right? So as much as we want to build email lists, I think the most important thing is we want to get people to know our brand name, know our name, depending on how your podcast is structured, so that even if you lose the email list, because we want to prepare for the worst case scenario. So that's why you see some certain. I'll give an example. We've had instances where celebrities they never had a YouTube channel. They decided to start a YouTube channel, and in 1 week, 2 weeks, they get a million subscribers without promoting or doing anything. because they already have a name and they already like people already know them. You get
Brand recognition.
yeah. So that when people see because things could you want to build a kind of like a what's the word now? A business that's built to last and not just
Yeah.
not
Well, and
just
that's a
yeah not
mistake a lot of young podcasters make when they're starting out, and something I would highly encourage people to think about, right? If they're wanting to start a podcast and they haven't, one of the most important things you can do is you can decide to what level you want. What do you want out of your podcast? Do you have something you love and you just want to get on and share it with the world? Are you trying to, actually make some money with it? Are you trying to grow it? Are you happy if 25 or 30 people download your podcast and that's it? Or do you actually like want to make a run at it and try and be a quote unquote podcaster? Because there's nothing wrong with any answer that comes out of that question.
yeah
Right?
yeah
If you just want to put out a show because you love talking about stuff and you don't care if 25 people or 100 people or 1,000,000 people listen to it, right? Because you just want to get on and talk. You have something to share and there are other people in the world. If you have something you want to talk about, there are other people in the world who want to hear about that thing,
yeah yeah
right?
yeah
And so if you want to be just a casual podcaster, there's 100% nothing wrong with that, but it helps if you want to try and think through that as you're starting because it helps pad the situation, right? If you actually want to make a business out of it, then you got to jump into this thinking about business, not just about podcasting, which
yeah.
totally surprised me. I knew nothing about business when I started.
Well, yeah. Yeah, but now you have a business and yeah, everything's working fine.
It's a lot of growing pains, man. People,
Yeah.
that part of the reason we get podcasters starting and then stopping so quickly is everybody thinks they have a lot to say about something, but they don't. They're excited about it at the moment, right? When I decided what I was going to podcast about, there were two things I came down to. I was either going to do what I do now, or I was going to be a fitness podcaster
Oh,
because I can talk weightlifting all
all
day,
day.
every day,
Yeah.
from night to start to finish. Like there is nothing else I actually truly enjoy as much as lifting weights. As far as like just doing it, right? So I can talk, but there are so many fitness podcasters, just like there's so many fitness YouTubers or Instagrammers, right? And so I was thought, oh yeah, that'd be uphill. Like everybody and their dog is fitness podcaster and YouTuber and blah, blah, blah. So, but I went with something because I can talk about men's personal development the same way. I've been talking about it for
Yeah.
5 years. I've run 2 conferences, men's conferences over the couple of years I've been doing this. I put out bi-weekly emails and have for years. I used to do 2 shows a week. I scaled it back to 1 with the rebrand, but I used to do 2 shows a week. I've been talking about this for years and I still love talking about it, right?
Yeah.
And when you're thinking about a podcast, you got to find that kind of deep love for sharing with the world or you're going to get tired. This
Yeah.
is a lot of work.
Just to be clear, when you say bi-weekly, do you mean twice a week or once every 2 weeks?
I mean, once every 2 weeks. So I have
Okay.
2 separate mailing lists. I have one, and it's very clearly marked as this is the weekly announcement email because I know you're busy. And that's the way I describe it on the forum is I know you're busy. You don't have time to see everything I've been doing. Like go scroll through my website every day week. So I have a weekly email that if I release a podcast, if I release a blog post, it basically auto sends every week. And it's just hey, this week on Purpose Driven Men, this podcast episode release, this blog post, this product review. And that's all that's in the email. And that is a separate email list. And that is for people who they like some of the stuff I do, but they don't want to watch all of it or listen to all of it. Like I have a good friend who been a big supporter. He honestly was part of the motivations to start this. And he's a single guy, right? He doesn't want to listen to the episodes I do talking about marriage or raising
Yeah.
kids,
Yeah.
right? So this is for that group, like corporate people who are super busy, who they want to see what the options are. Oh, this. I don't want to listen to any of those. I don't want to see any of those, right? And then I have my bi-weekly, like inner circle email that comes out every 2 weeks. And that's the one where I've got multiple articles and behind the scenes stuff and special offers and some heart to heart. Like when I got deplatformed, like I shared that entire thing with my email list.
Oh,
I had pictures, like graph pictures of my downloads and stuff like that. I mean, I shared the whole thing. I got raw. I was like, I honestly don't know if I can keep going, guys. I don't know if I can start over from scratch. Like it set me back so hard to watch 4 years worth of work disappear.
and I'm guessing you got
So
replies from your listeners.
I got some from the ones that have connected with me on other platforms where they can like DM me and stuff like that. And that's where that comes in handy, right? Is sharing that stuff there. I had people sending me messages like, bro, I love your content. Man, keep going. Please don't stop. I need this. I had one listener reach out who's been there since the early days, and he's like, you can't stop. I need this. You're making a difference in people's lives. Please don't quit on us. Like he was literally just, he asked that nicely, please don't give up on us. I know this has got to be hard. I'm still here. Don't give up on us.
Yeah. Like it's very nice
like that feedback from the audience saved me because I was half a heartbeat from walking away.
Yeah, I think it's at that point in time where um it's not just about the numbers, it's now about the people, right? And having them tell you
Right.
that, man, you've changed my life. That's a lot.
Well, those stories will carry you. Like I did a men's conference about 2 years into this. I decided to try and bring it home to my local area. And so I actually hosted a men's conference here in my local area. I brought in speakers, like I brought in multiple speakers from around the country. It cost me like $12,000 to put on the event. Out of pocket entirely. I didn't make anything back on it hardly. But I will never forget the second one because I did my closing remarks on the last night of the conference, and I was up on stage and I did the official closing and was trying to walk through the auditorium and get to the back so could shake people's hands on the way out. And this guy who almost didn't come, right? He couldn't afford to come. We connected in person, like we met through a mutual friend. And he found out I was doing this and we kind of talked and he's like, yeah, I'd be really interested. Then he found out there was a cost for the ticket, right? He's like, well, man, I don't really have, right now financially. I said, bro, there's a ticket with your name on it at the desk. It's in your hands now. Show up or don't. But there's a ticket at the desk for you. You're in.
Yeah.
And as I was walking out of the auditorium, he stopped me halfway back and just threw his arms around me. Like we weren't like tight or anything, right? We met through a mutual friend. He threw his arms around me and was like, you saved my life. And I was like, bro, you showed up, you did this, right? This is not me. Since that time, the guy was, what I found out from a mutual friend later was like, he was about to lose his job. He was struggling with alcohol. His marriage was on the rocks because of his alcohol abuse. His job was on the rocks. His kids didn't want to be around him. Like he had just trashed his life with alcohol. And I connected him with a couple of people at the conference that I knew were in recovery while he was there. 6 months after the conference, he had gone and gotten to rehab and gotten treatment. He had fixed things with his wife. He was prioritizing his children. His job was rock solid. He was smiling. He was bright-eyed. Our youngest daughters, mine and his, both go to after school program together. And so I saw him there like 6 months, 8 months later. And he gave me the biggest hug. He's, man, my life is so good. And, it is those moments as somebody, and that's the thing, it doesn't matter. Like I do a personal development podcast. Okay. So people might be listening. It's like, well, I want to do a comedy podcast. You know what? Comedy can save your life.
Yeah. Like, dude, really, really.
You don't have to be a self-help guy or personal development. There is somebody who needs what you have to share with the world.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of people who I watch some comedy videos and I see some people that say like, dude, this comedian, this guy got me through the loss of my mom. Like he was stuff that I was listening all through when I felt sad. I just listened to his stuff and sometimes it just makes me, kind of like laugh and stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, I never knew comedy could be so deep.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the crazy thing, right? Is I've been in those dark places. Okay. I without going down a long, deep story, like I was years ago in my 20s, I almost killed myself in my 20s when I was in the military. That's a whole nother story, but I've been to those dark places. I have struggled with the nobody loves me, I should just kill myself thoughts, right? I've struggled with that in my life. I've dealt with that. And when you're in those dark places, you don't know what's going to get through to you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's it. And yeah, I'm glad that we're having this conversation right now. Yeah. One of the questions I wanted to ask now is, and I'm just going to ask you now before I forget is, you said earlier on that you started your podcast because you wanted to build an audience for a book you were writing, which you're still writing now, but the podcast is going strong for 5 years now. And for me, the question I want to ask
Mhm.
is, when you were about starting, what was, you wanted to get an audience, but what was the number like in your head? What number did you have in your head that, okay, this was a number that meant to have an audience? And yeah.
Okay, so that's there's really two answers to that. Because there was I need to build an audience to sell a book, right? And obviously, I'm hoping that number is really, really big, right? Because you write a book, you want to make some money, and the majority of people don't. There are like 25,000 books or something written every single year, and most of them barely sell 10 copies. So yeah, from the capitalistic side of me of I wanted to make some money selling my knowledge. Yeah. Like I was really hoping for some massive audience numbers. I never thought I'd be the next Joe Rogan that, I want to be. Right. Once I actually started doing this and fell in love with the actual number, I didn't have a number, man. The sky is the limit. I'm like, I want to sell a bazillion books and never do anything but talk again.
Yeah.
Like, I wish I could give you like when it came to writing the book, it was
Yeah.
I want to sell millions of copies and like go on speaking circuits and podcasts for the rest of my life and talk about this. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to work again. I want to live off the royalties from my book and like get all these stories about how I've changed people's lives. That's what I wanted. That's okay. That was partially self-serving, partially I wanted the audience because I want to help as many people as possible. I want more of those stories. That hug with "You saved my life." I want more of those stories because I truly love helping people.
Yeah.
It's what I'm passionate about. I've always ended up as the teacher or the trainer in whatever profession I was in. I was a youth minister in the IT sector. I was a team trainer. Like I'd set up new teams and train new people. Right. And I loved that. I loved watching those people blossom and get better offers at other companies after I trained them and stuff like that. Like I love helping people move forward.
Oh.
Um, so I wanted a big number because I wanted a big reach, right? I wanted to help as many people as possible. The number that I live by, because my wife owns 50% of our company, right?
Okay.
The number that we live by, the guiding number in our lives for every piece of content I create is one. Our vow to each other, my promise, this is where like when things got hard, right? I had people talking to me. My promise was if one person that needed to hear this today hears it and it makes a difference, then everything is worth it.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, like growing this business, okay, building my business and my podcast is part of that, right? Building my coaching business and doing conferences, everything I've done under the banner of the Fallible Man, which is my company. I can tell you, I have spent well over $500,000 in the last 5 years. I have literally my wife and I have liquidated our life savings building this company. So if people want to put a number on things, I have literally spent over $500,000 because I didn't want to have 25 people. I wanted 25,000 people hearing every episode. I wanted 250,000 people hearing I wanted the reach because I wanted to impact people. And that's still my goal. But
Cool.
the guiding number for my podcast every day, what gets me out of bed, the guiding number is if one person hears this and it's what they needed to hear today to live a little better life, to be closer to their family, to believe in themselves more, to step forward in their life, everything is worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm one of those persons that believe that the things we work on us. So the question I want to ask is, what has podcasting really taught you about yourself and that surprised you?
Podcasting has surprised me in how much I actually just love doing this. There are those things you're like, okay, I'm going to be good at this, so I'm going to do this, right? That's why I was in the IT sector, I'm good at it. I made a lot of money doing it. I'm good at it. But like I'm that nerd who I have 3 more shows in the back burner. Like in my personal notes, I have 3 more shows already fleshed out. I am dying to get to a place where I financially can afford to take on doing another show and another show and another. I love the podcasting community, and I love the reach it has into people's lives. To me, it's such an intimate space because somebody believes in what we're doing enough, believes in the message, wants to hear what's going on, that they are intimately allowing me in their ears. I mean, if you think about it, it's a very intimate thing because people have you on their car stereo or a lot of times in their headphones, right? This is very intimate connection. And I love that trust. I love that I've connected with somebody in a way that they're trusting me to be an intimate part of their self conversation and a part of their life. And I didn't expect to, like I said, it was a means to an end when I started, and then I fell in love with it.
Yeah. That's good. Because I mean the opportunity to get to like change and effect change the people, not being restricted by place or that or time. Like I feel like it's a great power. And yeah. Well, okay, I just have two more questions and then we'll round up the episode. The next question is what's the weirdest place you've ever recorded an episode?
Weirdest place?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any truly. See, I think recording online is really weird to me. Starting out, I was so camera shy. Like just like talking to a computer really screwed me up. I've spoken live in front of a couple thousand.
But you can see the other person.
No, well, that's the thing, right? Is so when I started, I was a solo show.
Oh.
Then I went,
Oh.
right? Yeah, I was a solo podcaster, and then I went to doing half and half, and then I started doing one solo show and one guest show a week, and now I'm back to doing I do three solo episodes and one guest show a month now.
Okay.
I cut my production in half when I rebranded, partially because I'm busy producing other people's podcasts these days. But when I started, it was just me, and I just turned on the camera, like I said, for the sake of, I was like, well, I got a camera, I might as well record it and put it on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
I have spoken in front of over 2,000 people. Didn't even faze me. Talking to a camera, like I actually have my first episode up on my YouTube channel just as a reminder.
Yeah.
Because I'm so like stiff and mechanical, and I'm a guy who's used to working in a room. Like I'm very comfortable speaking in front of thousands of people. Doesn't even faze me. I grew up doing it. My dad was a preacher. I'm a former youth minister. Live audience, dude. I'm like, it's the only time I'm giddy. Like I'm me times 10 on a stage. I love it. Talking to a camera, I was so awkward the first, I don't know, 40 episodes, 60 episodes. I was so awkward. I actually like printed out a picture of my friend's face and like glued it on cardboard and then cut a hole out it, put it over the camera lens. So I looked like I was looking at my friend because it was so weird.
Yeah. I
Other than
probably
that,
might
I
have to
actually
adapt your
recorded
idea.
some episodes at a church.
Yeah.
I recorded a couple episodes at a park and a couple episodes at a church, but
okay.
I don't get out of the studio much.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. In the list of weird, I don't think what you just mentioned is in top 10.
Well, that's like,
because I've had a guest tell me that they recorded an episode in a client's house.
I would absolutely like. I have a completely mobile setup and I have my studio set up, and so I've recorded an episode at like my friend's house, and I've recorded a couple episodes at a church building, and once in a park. Once on my back porch. I recorded a couple episodes on my back porch once. That way I could sit outside and drink and smoke cigars. But I don't get out a whole lot. So
yeah.
Now I have new goals. I'm gonna have to find a weird place to do it.
Yeah.
Now that you asked, I gotta go find a weird place to do a podcast.
Yeah, but some of the places you mentioned is the fact that, having a mobile setup, and that's one of the things I work on. Like I have my gear, like I could just put everything in one small box and boom, I'm ready to go. So even if I go to a different country right now, I'm ready to record and, get something going. My setup is mobile. Yeah, that's a pretty advantage you get. Wow. What advice do you have for beginner podcasters, those are just starting out thinking, kind of like wondering if they should keep on going with their podcast?
You have to start with a really clear idea of what you want from the podcast. Like I was saying earlier, you got to start with a really clear, it's like, do I want to be casual and just do this and have some fun? Do I want to make a go of it? What do I actually want out of this? Am I doing this for me, or am I doing this because I want to, become the next Joe Rogan? And people get Joe Rogan wrong all the time because he's huge, but Joe Rogan was already famous when he started his podcast.
Yeah.
So it helps. And I like Joe Rogan as much as anybody else, but it helps, right?
Yeah.
But think of what they want out of it personally, because it is a personal experience. And then, don't compare I'm a podcast consultant. I've worked on several other shows. Don't compare what you want to do with anybody else, right? You got me. I've been doing
Yeah.
this for 5 years, and I've been
Yeah.
to the top 1%, and I've been knocked down to I don't even show up on the radar, right?
Yeah.
You have to decide why you want to do this and what you want out of it and what your goal is with it, and then just do what you do. People don't so a fact that most young podcasters don't know, or new podcasters don't know, is it doesn't matter who Joe Rogan has on his podcast. Your listeners are going to come for you. They
Yeah.
build a relationship with you. Joe Rogan's ratings don't actually change much regardless of who he has.
Yeah.
So he could have Neil deGrasse Tyson on, or Elon Musk, and his download numbers are pretty much the same as if he has Joey Pets on, who plays a mobster in movies and stuff, right?
Yeah.
His numbers don't change. Why? Because people listen to Joe Rogan to listen to Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
People are going to come to your podcast for you. So
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
compare you to somebody else,
Yeah.
and just run your race, man.
Thank you so much for that. Where can listeners learn more about you, your podcast, and what you do, and they want to listen to your show?
PurposeDrivenMen.com. That's the home base for everything. Our blog, our podcast. We do reviews on some products that I think are useful for men here and there and things like that. But I'm trying to build it into a content hub for everything I do and then some.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and thank you so much for sharing your podcast story today.
Glad to be here, man. Thank you.
That's it for today's episode of my podcast story. I am Wisdom Okonkwo, and I hope this conversation sparked new ideas and gave you a deeper look into the heart of podcasting. If you've loved this episode, consider supporting the show by buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/wisdomhq. Every bit helps keep the stories going. And hey, don't forget to follow, rate, and share this podcast with another podcaster or creator who would find it helpful. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you in the next episode.